Joining us today on the Leaders Learning from Leaders podcast is Anibal Soler, the current superintendent of Yonkers Public Schools in New York, where he began as superintendent in May of 2024. He has most recently served as the superintendent of Schenectady City School District and Batavia School District in New York State. Mr. Soler also served as Associate Superintendent of Strategic Alignment and Innovation at Buffalo Public Schools, where he led the Strong Community Schools strategy focused on revitalizing 21 schools. Welcome, Anibal. I have to tell you, I'm really looking forward to exploring your insights from the various experiences you've had in school leadership.
Thank you, Steve. Looking forward to the conversation, and hopefully I could provide some insights for any aspiring leaders or current leaders.
Since our podcast airs nationwide, I'm wondering if you would give listeners a description of the Yonkers school community.
Yeah, so we are the third largest school system in the state of New York. We only follow New York City, which is almost 1 million students, and Buffalo Public Schools, which is bigger than us by about 5,000 or so kids. We're 24,000 students currently, and we're a majority district that serves students of color. Our largest demographic is Latino students. We're about 65% Latino, about 15% African American. About 10% or so white students, and then a mix of other ethnicities. We are about 75% free and reduced poverty index, if you were to look at that. We're an urban community. We're right outside of the Bronx. We butt up to the Bronx from the city. We're in the lower Hudson. If you were looking at the map, you would see us kind of towards heading towards New York City, but not necessarily in New York City. So we're a large urban metropolitan community. We're about a little less than 220,000 residents or so in our city. And that's probably the best description I can give it.
Thanks.
They call it the City of Hills is another name for Yonkers because it's a very up and down, different elevations in Yonkers.
Well, I'm anxious to explore the unique challenges and the rewards of leading a large urban school system. But before we go there, as I was doing my homework on your background, I found that you started your educational career as an art teacher.
I
And
did,
so
I did.
I was wondering what role you thought or how that may have influenced your career in education.
I'm not sure if it's from being an art teacher, but I always feel like I have a pretty good the ability to kind of step back and get more of a vision around things and
Ah,
kind of see things more visually or more pragmatically around when you're communicating to stakeholders, letting people see the image differently or the picture differently, or trying to be very visual when I present or speak. I like to use my hands, obviously, and maybe that's more cultural than it is artistic related. But I think for me, it's always been about trying to understand like what's the masterpiece I want to create at the end of the work, and then being able to
very
kind of
cool.
back plan around that. And so I think for me, it's always been able to have a vision around things, being able to look at a situation from one way, a second way, and then what's the third way? And trying to take some of the strategies that I would use in art, whether I'm looking at a still portrait or looking at some kind of obscure painting to try to be able to understand things a little differently. And so I think it's just kind of inherent in the work. So I think there's a lot to be said for people who are in the arts and their ability to lead. It's a different domain that we kind of operate from than our traditional, very rudimentary, if it's this, if it's that. I always relate it to math, logic tables. I don't know if you remember logic tables. If this,
Yeah,
then this,
yeah, yeah.
that. I kind of feel that there's some of that in the arts.
It's interesting because in a lot of my work, I talk about how I've been impacted when I work with the performing arts staff uh, as to how they're capable of planning. Um, they're really focused on on what it is the student's doing.
Right. Right. Right.
Uh, that the student has to do the work, and they plan for the student to do the work.
Yeah.
Uh, and as someone who doesn't have that art piece, I'm always amazed at people who look and see things that that I miss. So I think your descriptor is a great one of being able to. You've got the picture of where you're headed.
Yeah. 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 I think, taking text and seeing what it looks like in practice, so you think about, evaluations, right? You look at domains and you look at where people want to be at, but what does that look like? Help me understand what that looks like beyond just a written description. So yeah, thanks. I appreciate that, Steve.
Um, I'm wondering if you'd talk a little bit about how did the experiences that you had in Buffalo and Batavia and Schenectady impact the start of your work now as superintendent in Yonkers?
Yeah, so when you're in leadership, it's really important to be around talent. It's really important to be around talent. And I would say probably my most rewarding experience was as an associate superintendent in Buffalo Public Schools. I worked for a really dynamic, charismatic superintendent, Dr. Kreiner Cash, and I also had a team of colleagues there who were extremely talented. Many of them went on to superintendencies as well. So when you're around talent, you learn. I'm a student of the game, so I'm always like trying to pick up things as a former athlete. You want to know what the best players do, what they're doing on their off hours. So I've had the ability to be surrounded around a lot of talent and pick their best practices. Like this person's doing this person's doing that. I'm going to tweak it and make it my own. I'm going to do it like this. And so, one of the things that I learned is that most of this work is really rooted in common practices. It's just around um, adjusting it to the context of the community that you're serving. And so, I think everybody wants high quality schools no matter where you are with Buffalo, Batavia, Schenectady. It's what practices can translate across those communities and then customizing it to the local context and telling that story to the local context. So, having been able to do work in a large system like Buffalo, and then translate it to a small community like Batavia, there were things that I could bring easily and have the big city experience, but also tweak it to a smaller community that was only 2,200 kids in Batavia, right? And Schenectady was about 9,200 students. So, being able to still translate some of those best practices around, high quality instruction, community schools initiatives for boys and young men of color, restorative practices. They work in all those settings, but they just work a little differently given the community context. And so being aware enough that that is important, messaging is important, and how you tell the story of your leadership and of the work that you do is equally important. And I think it's something we forget that we do have to tell our story in order to get community support, community buy-in. But yeah, for me, the most rewarding experience I had was my time in Buffalo.
That it's really interesting to hear you describe that because some of your colleagues who were there with you, I've already hosted in this spot, and I wondered. I knew there had to be a strong leadership connection that led to that happening. I've heard you describe that, but I find it really interesting and valuable that you point out that you had a group of people who learned from each other.
Yeah, it's good competitiveness. I think we are often sometimes afraid to say, let's compete with each other. Let's go out there and try to be great. If you're great, I'm going to be greatest too. And I really admire the group of people that I worked with and seeing them flourish in their communities and stealing their ideas with pride and saying, hey, I'm going to take yours and I'm going to do it. And as well, I'm going to do it better. And being, being vulnerable enough to be in a safe space of educators that and leaders that understand that like if their kids win and my kids win, we all win, and so there
Yeah.
shouldn't be any animosity around stealing best practices and tailoring them to our community. So that was the kind of the conditions that was created in Buffalo, but also as we've gone out, we stay connected. We are in group chats and we're sharing ideas and concepts, and then we're all cheering each other on. And I think
Yeah.
there's a sense of leadership that we lose that as you get up into these apexes of organizations, it's a triangle, right? So you get more isolated as you move up. But the reality is you've got to find other folks at the top of their apexes that allow you to be vulnerable, courageous and supportive, and that are cheering you on, and are there when you fail, because you will fail. If you do this work well, there will be opportunities for you to fail. It's just a matter of, failing forward, doing better the next time, or learning from that failure so that you're better the next time you try to roll out a bond project or a change in organizational management.
I kind of connect the phrase a positive competition.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It pushes everybody forward,
yeah.
and it's not about pushing anybody back. Um, well, I guess I need to ask you to paint one of those pictures now, because as I was doing my homework, I found your system using the phrase Yonkers magic. So I
Yeah,
thought
that's
maybe
what we do.
you could tell us about Yonkers magic.
Yeah, see, so I think, when I got here in May, you spend a lot of time learning an institution. You spend a
Yeah,
lot of time learning a community. And, one thing I didn't say earlier, Steve, is that, I'm following a really solid leader who was here for 8 years in an urban community as a superintendent, which is really hard. Average lifespan is like three to
yeah.
five, and so, I've seen a lot of successes, and I've seen a lot of challenges, but despite them, there's success. And so, what I learned really quickly as I visited all 40 schools and or all 40 campuses, 39 schools, 40 campuses, I learned really quickly that there was this magic in Yonkers, this magic that occurs. It's not something that we do to our kids or to our families, but we do with our families, that we create magic that regardless of the challenge in front of us, we figure out a way. We have over 90% graduation rate, which is really amazing in a community that looks like us, that has the challenges like us. Obviously, it's hard to maintain it. I always tell people highly effective is a place you visit, but not a place you live, right? You go there, you do well, you're going to have some dips, but it's how you get back up, right? And so, the one thing about Yonkers is that we always show up. We always do the best that we can. We're a national model community for the Obama Foundation when it comes to our work on My Brother's Keeper. And so when I got here, I kept thinking to myself, like, what's the theme? What's our rally cry? And Steve, I'm not sure if this has come up in other talks of leadership, but you got to have a hashtag. You got to have a calling. You got to have a hashtag that people can rally around. And so that's something that I learned in my time in Buffalo. We had strong community schools. In my time in Batavia, we had Better Together Batavia, right? In my time in Schenectady, we had hashtag Schenectady Rising. That was our calling. That was our call to action. And so here it's Yonkers Magic. It's hey, how'd you guys do that? Can't tell you. Yonkers Magic. And it's one of those things where people are getting excited around, like, this is what we do. This is what we do with our kids. This is what we do with our community. And I'm real careful to say it's with our community and not to our community, because nothing's wrong with them. It's our job to figure out collectively, how do we create this magic? How do we continue to have kids achieving at high rates? We have, like I said, nearly almost 65% of our kids are Latino, which means a large number of them are multilingual learners. So they're coming in native Spanish speakers, and we're still getting them to achieve. We also have many other languages as well, but our English language learners are achieving significantly well once we get them to levels of proficiency. They're a big success. The big reason why we have great success in our graduation rates. So we have a blue ribbon school. So, to me, that Yonkers magic is whenever we have a vision and a charge, we figure it out. And then not only do we do it, but we do it at a high level, at that people start to ask, how'd you guys do that? Where'd you guys do that? And so, my tenure here, that's the rally cry, Yonkers magic. We're going to continue to create it. And when we have a challenge, we're going to figure out how to get through it. And we're going to continue to create magic collectively as a city and as a community.
As I, well, you just went right to the word. I was going to say, as I'm listening to you, I'm hearing community as a key element of the magic.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think oftentimes, we come in, we have the word super in our title, superintendent, but we cannot do anything without a collective force of individuals working and helping us do the work. And so there's nothing really super around a superintendent. I think the reality is, how do we bring community together around challenges or opportunities for improvement or the ability for us to improve? So yeah, it's definitely I'm definitely a collective person where I want to bring in the individuals together, but I'll help lead the vision. Remember, I'll help create the path or where we want to go, but I cannot do it in isolation. And if I do this work well, and my hope is that that there's a testament of that in my previous district in Schenectady, that people take the blueprint, that people take the playbook, and continue to implement things because they understand why we were doing X, Y, and Z. They understand the vision, and so it's about continuing to get there.
I'm wondering how that community element carries through to the people who are leading your individuals' 40 campuses.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is culture building, and it's about inspecting what you expect. It's about going and being visible. Leadership cannot be done via email. It cannot be done via AI. There needs to be a human connection and a visibility, and you're constantly coaching. You're constantly providing feedback, providing praise, providing feedback, providing praise. Like that's the cycle, right? Like, hey, did you ever think about doing this? And hey, great job. Thank you for doing this. By the way, I noticed that there's another area we could work on. And so, I think it's also important around who you surround yourself, my senior executive cabinet, making sure I have the right people on the bus, and how am I supporting them to help carry out my vision because I can't be everywhere, when they're supervising principals, and I think again, we try to use the tool, well, I try to use the tool that the evaluation is really a feedback tool to kind of help you grow and learn and being as specific and helping you provide evidence that you're doing the things you said you would do. And this isn't a gotcha. This is hopefully an engagement tool that allows you to do better. And that's kind of how you get the vision in practice. Like show me how you increase parent involvement. Don't just tell me, but show me how. Like provide evidence, provide artifacts, flyers, sign-in sheets, video. I'm a huge proponent of again telling our story. So I encourage our leaders to document when they do great things, document it, put it on social media, put it in your newsletter. I brought in this concept of a weekend review. So every week I publish a weekend review to my community so they know what I'm doing, who I'm talking to, where am I spending my time, what I'm doing, where's my energy being spent. And that should help tell the story and also help with the vision work. And right now we're in an interesting place. Our strategic plan kind of expires at the end of the year. So we're building the strategic plan now, and that's that visioning, right? And so I'm a firm believer that people do not like to fill 50 question Likert scale type of questions for, do we do this well? How well? Highly likely, unlikely, all those things, and so we were doing a very basic, rational approach. We have three questions we want everybody to answer. What do we do well? You can write it out, type it out, do whatever. What don't we do well? Same thing. And in the next 5 years, what do you think we need to what do you think we need to focus on? That's it. Three questions. It's qualitative. I know people are not fans of qualitative work, but we'll take those informations and we'll summarize it, and hopefully we'll see some common themes between all the respondents as we meet with various stakeholder groups, and we'll plug away at our old plan to see did we do the things we said we were going to do the first time, and if we didn't, where are we? And really pushing our stakeholder group in our community to say like, what does it look like moving forward? And I think we're in an interesting time in New York, at least. We're reinventing what it means to be a portrait of a graduate. There are just conversations around, the Regents exams not being the be all end all in terms of graduating. So I think it's really an interesting time to be a leader in the state and then also to interpret that into practice.
I feel like I just got a peek at what makes the Yonkers magic happen. uh, what would you say is the role that you have in guiding the next generation of school leaders, maybe especially for urban schools?
Yeah, I think, a lot of it is about, a couple things, opportunity and access. I think urban school leaders, there's a lot of talent in our school systems, but they don't always have the right access or the right opportunities to be in the right positions. Oftentimes we're quick to dismiss folks that just may not be in the right setting. So I feel like part of my work is like, hey, you may not be a great principal, but maybe a better director, or you're maybe a better assistant principal. And being able to build people up and either continue their journey, but also to make sure they're in the right opportunities and the right access. And I feel like, having networks of people is something that we don't do well in systems. We're very siloed, and if somebody gets an opportunity, more often than not, it's because of their network, not because of what they know or were able to do, but it's about who they had access to. And I think that's the challenge, is that we've got to go beyond the traditional people who have access and figure out where the talent is behind the traditional. This person knows this person, so they recommended them, but really looking at their bodies of work to say, hey, I don't know who this person is, but as I dug deeper, they were able to do some really great things. And you know what? They may not have the traditional path, but it's my job to maybe coach them, put them in a setting. And, in urban environments, and I know depending where you are, representation and matters. So our urban communities need to see leaders that look like them.
Yep.
And that does there are intangible conversations. I've heard this term recently, cultural synchronization. That happens that doesn't need to be PD'd because it's inherent in the person's lived experiences. And so if so, I feel like in urban we have to be real intentional around that. Not to say that someone who doesn't come from that community can't serve. That doesn't say that, but we have to be intentional that we create some opportunities for underrepresented groups to get access and to have opportunities to lead in kind of more urban situations. And again, I went through the pipeline. Most of my people who I looked up to did not come from the same communities that I did. So that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is kind of in 2024 and beyond, there is some value in making sure that there is some diversity at the leadership. Those lived experiences do allow people to bring a different lens to leadership um, that we know is more needed, I think, now, given the ever-changing landscape of students and communities.
Yep. 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 Um, before we wrap up, I just want to kind of open the door for any encouraging message you'd send out to people currently serving in the superintendency.
Yeah, I think my biggest message is, none of us is perfect. You'll make mistakes. It's inherent. If you're leading, you're going to make mistakes. We're all humans, so there may be things that impact us in our journey. I think it's more around how you respond to those things and how do you pivot. What are you willing to learn? What are you willing to adjust? I also think networks are extremely important around who you surround yourself with and what habits you can learn from them. I think that you've got to ground yourself knowing that you don't know everything and you have to lead that way in a sense of vulnerability, but also in a sense of being willing to learn and always being a student of leadership. Like reading, I think reading is extremely important. Exposure, whether you're reading, whether you're listening to audiobooks, podcasts. I mean, the plethora of information and content out there is unlike we've ever seen, and it's only going to continue to explode. So learn new tools. Again, be vulnerable. Put yourself as a learner, even though you're maybe the leader, and allow people space to teach you. I often think sometimes as we move in these, we get like, oh, I got here, I'm here. I don't need to know anything else. I don't need to, I'm doing an AI micro credentialing program with my a group of untenured administrators in my district because I need to learn it so
Yeah.
that I can know the pros, the cons, just like them. I can't ask them to lead buildings and work with kids, and I'm not willing to expose myself in some of that stuff. So be vulnerable enough to still be a learner, even though you're the leader.
Yeah. Two big words jumped out there as a list to you. I'm hearing lead learner as superintendent, and there is risk taking.
Yeah, I'm leading one of the largest systems in the state of New York, and I know what the data and the research says, right? So I'm 6 months in or 7 months in to potentially a 3 to 5 year journey. So I know I'm up against a lot, and these are highly political environments, and so you just try to make sure that the work you do speaks for itself, and that you don't fall into some of those traps.
When you talked about that you're understand that the failure is going to be there from time to time. That's part of the learning cycle. That's part of the risk taking, but
Yep.
it's critical to the ongoing learning.
I have a, you can't really see it, it's on my wall, but there's a sign that says fail early, fail often, fail forward. And I try to live that way where if I do, because I know it's going to happen, if I do it early enough, do it often enough so that when I do fail, I can land in a better place. And so I think, I'm in my 25th year in education and I'm basically all in urban. I think I've learned a lot of lessons, both personally, but also professionally that I've been able to kind of guide me as I move forward. And so, my hope is that my body of work has allowed me to get to this pretty big position in the state of New York, and that I do well, and then we'll see what happens moving forward.
Well, thank you. I came into this expecting that I would enjoy hearing your insights, and I certainly did. You talked about the networking piece. What's a way that listeners might be able to follow up and connect with you with the questions that they might have?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. So again, I told you I'm a big fan of social media. You can hit me on LinkedIn. My name is Anibal Soler Jr. I'm probably one of the only ones out there in LinkedIn world with that name. They can also find me on X. Same thing at my first name, last name, JR. I'm on pretty much all the social medias under the same handle. I operate those channels and platforms as if they're public facing because I'm a public figure, and so there's no there's no belief of like, really, this is my personal page and this is my not
Yeah.
a superintendent all the time. And I learned that lesson early on in life, right? So, but thank you, Steve. I'm glad that I was able to share a little bit of the Yonkers magic, and folks can definitely reach out, and hopefully we can continue to network and build some synergy here across the country.
I appreciate it. We'll put those links in the podcast lead and make it easy for folks to find. Have a
Great.
great day.
Thank you, Steve.